Hello everyone, thank you for checking out today's video. In this one, we're going to be covering the steps on how to join the United States Air Force Reserve. My name is Michael, and I've been in the Air Force Reserve for 6 years. I am a staff sergeant, so an E5. I've had 2 jobs in the Air Force Reserve. I started off as a pavements and construction equipment troop, and I cross-trained over to administration, which is where I am now. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through each one of these steps. I'll provide some context to each one of these steps, and I'll also provide my own personal experience for these steps so you guys have a better idea of what to expect as you go through the process to enlisting in the Air Force Reserve. All right, so there's some different ways that you can join the Air Force Reserve. You can go in as enlisted, officer, or prior service. I'll just be covering the enlisted. This is probably where most of you fall. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. So it says step 1, apply. So apply through an Air Force Reserve recruiter via your local recruitment office, over the telephone, or online. Once you are confirmed to meet all the requirements, you'll be moved into testing. So there's a few different ways you could do this. Probably the easiest way is to reach out to your local recruiter because you're going to have to work with them anyway. But you could also call. There's a phone number. I'll see if I can provide it in the description. But there's a phone number you can call. It's like the National Air Force Reserve recruiting line. And what they could do is they can ask you some preliminary questions. These will be questions related to your criminal history, your education history, your health history, and depending on your experience and how you answer those questions, if you are qualified, what they'll do is they'll pass your information along to your local recruiter, so the one that you're zoned for, and then your recruiter should be reaching out to you at that point to proceed on to the next step. However, if you have something that pops up in one of the questions, sometimes it'll immediately disqualify you and you have no chance of joining, at least the Air Force. All branches are different for depending on what the requirements are. But oftentimes, if it's an injury or maybe a condition like asthma, you could try to get a waiver. And you'll have to have a recruiter who's willing to work with you on that. And they can see if they can get a waiver pushed for you. They can also do waivers for morality issues, so things related to legal issues in your past. I don't know offhand which ones would be waiver eligible and which ones are just you have no chance of joining. So that'll be something you'll probably want to ask your local recruiter. And again, I'm going to post the link to the site in the description of this video, so there's links to everything on here once you visit this site. Okay, so the second step is the Aptitude testing. So before joining the Air Force Reserve, you must take the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Asvab test, which covers 4 critical areas: arithmetic, reasoning, work knowledge, paragraph comprehension, and mathematics knowledge. So this is the test that's going to determine which jobs you qualify for. Each branch has its own minimum requirements for what you need to reach on the Asvab in order for them to recruit you. Air Force has one of the higher requirements. I think Coast Guard actually has the highest. Navy actually dropped theirs down to like 10 or 12 not too long ago because they were having issues with recruiting. So it's a percentile test. So that means that if you got a 10%, that means 90% of the people who take that test scored higher than you. So you want to get as high on this test as you can so that you qualify for more jobs. And it's just it's going to go better for your career, because if you get a really low score, you're only going to qualify for certain jobs, and I won't say which jobs those are, but they're probably going to be ones that you may not want to do. So you're going to want to study for the ASVAB. There's tons of resources out there. I think there's a book called Asvab for Dummies, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's on, let's Google it. Asvab for Dummies. Yep, looks like there's a few of them. So Asvab for Dummies on there. Looks like there's apps out there. That one has really good reviews based on the best-selling Asvab for Dummies. So yeah, check Amazon, check the App Store. There's tons of great resources out there, especially if you've been out of school for a while. All right, now the physical and mental screening. So this is where you go to Meps. So that is the Medical Entrance Processing Station. Now, I will tell you about my experience at Meps, and hopefully this gives you a better idea of what to expect. So when you show up to Meps, congratulations, because that means that you've made it to that step, which is huge. So this is going to vary. You'll be there with active duty people too and guard people. But when people ship out for active duty, I believe they have to in process with Meps, and then they leave directly from Meps to basic training. So a little bit different for the reserve. So I only went to Meps once, and that was to just get my physical and mental screening. So initially when I showed up to Meps, I had a white t-shirt on. I was not told not to wear white. So the sergeant, I don't remember what rank, I think he was an E6 in the Army. I don't know what their ranks are in the Army, but he came up to me and he's like, "Why are you wearing white?" I was like, I don't know. He's like, "Take that off. We're going to get you another shirt." And he's like, what branch are you?" And I was like, "Air Force." He's like, "Ha, thank God he's Air Force." And then they had the Marine recruiter there. He's like, "Oh, glad he wasn't a Marine." So apparently it looks really bad if you show up to Meps unprepared like that. So I don't know if they said something to my recruiter, but my recruiter never told me not to wear white. So I don't know if that's still a thing, guys, but just to be on the safe side, do not wear white. Just wear a black t-shirt, a blue t-shirt, anything but white, apparently. And also take off any jewelry, because I had like a threaded bracelet thing on, and I had to cut that off because you can't have any jewelry on either while you're there. So initially when you show up, you line up. It's you with other people from different branches. So we had a couple Air Force people there, some Army, some Marines, some Navy. Initially you go through the metal detector. You put your stuff in a little bin, including your phone, so you don't have anything on you. Essentially, it's just you and your clothes. And from there, the first thing that we did is we went and got they take your blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is too high, you're pretty much stopped at that point. They're not going to proceed forward. So if your blood pressure is spiking because you're nervous, try to get that under control, guys, because that's a deal breaker right there. If your blood pressure is through the roof, they can't continue on. So once you're done with your blood pressure test, after that, you go get your vision test, a hearing test. You get a depth perception test. And then you also do, I think it's called the Ishihara color blindness test. So each one of these tests that you're taking are going to allow you to become eligible or uneligible for certain jobs. So because my depth perception test I didn't do very well, I immediately was disqualified for certain jobs because of it. All right, so yeah, you got your depth perception, your vision, your hearing. After that, you go to, where did we go after that? I think we hung out in some random room for a little bit. And then we were just talking with the sergeant there, the one that I mentioned at the beginning, who was giving me an earful because I was wearing the white t-shirt. So he's just kind of telling us a little bit about his experience. And then we're just waiting for the next steps. So that's one of the things in the military. It's the hurry up and wait mentality. So we were hurrying along to get to that point to just sit there for like an hour to get to the next step. After that, I believe we had lunch. So I think they just gave us a box lunch. It was like a sandwich, a drink, things like that. And then from there, you continue on with your evaluation. So the next thing that you do is you go do these really weird exercises. So you do things like, let me show you, Meps exercises. You do the duck walk. You do some really weird stuff. Yeah, kind of looks like that without the gun. So you're in your underwear too, by the way. So, hold on. Meps qualification exercises, I think is what it's called. So yeah, there was all sorts of like balancing exercises you have to do. The duck walk was one of them. That one stood out because you're in your underwear. So I think one of them was like you have to balance on one foot for a period of time. I think there was a push-ups in there too. There was just like really strange physical tests that you had to do in order to pass. After that, you're all nice and sweaty, and you meet with the doctor. And when you go to the doctor, she asks you a series of questions. They're going to ask you questions about your mental well-being. You know, have you ever thought about hurting yourself? Have you ever hurt yourself? Have you ever hurt someone else? Things that you would expect during a normal mental screening. After that, you get the full physical. So you got to drop them draws, and they're going to check out your goods, and you got to bend over because they check you for hemorrhoids. They check your joint mobility. So they kind of bend your knee forward and backwards. And I still remember when she was looking at mine, she was like, "Wow, it's very cracky." Because my knee kept popping. So I was like, oh God. And also watch your posture, because I was kind of slouching a little bit, and you don't want them to get suspicious at all. Even because it was a female doctor, I had to have Army sergeant in there with me because, they have to do that for, they don't want me to say that she like assaulted me or I assaulted her or anything like that. So they have to have a third party in the room. And he saw me slouching. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing? Perk up. You don't want, so he kind of eyed to me, quit slouching." What else did we do there? Yeah, that was pretty much the gist of it. So yeah, there was some physical, some mental, vision, eye, hearing, depth perception. I think they check your teeth. I don't remember how that works. I don't know if I had to go to a civilian dentist beforehand and get something signed or if they check my teeth there. I don't recall. But yeah, if you guys Google Meps exercises, they should give you a more comprehensive list of all the things that you'll be doing while you're there. It was a pretty long day. We were there for probably about 6 or 7 hours. It was a long day. You have to get there really early in the morning too, pretty much as soon as they open. So yeah, just be prepared for that. All right, next step is the prepare for basic military training. So once you passed all the necessary requirements and tests and been officially accepted into the Air Force Reserve, you'll be placed into the delayed entry program. Here, you'll wait for your departure date for the basic military training. During this time, we recommend you work on your physical conditioning to meet the challenges of BMT. I was also lucky enough to be a part of DTF flight, which is your student flight, which is where you actually drill on the weekends. You go to your DTF flight, and during DTF, they tell you about things to expect in basic military training. So you need to learn your chain of command. You need to learn the ranks, how to do drill, so how to do facing movements and how to stand at attention, things like that, how to address the training instructors. So it's either sir or ma'am, trainee, your last name, reports as ordered. At least that's what it used to be. So they would do that. We also did some physical training. We would help some of the reserve units set up for commander's call and things along those lines. So hopefully you guys are able to do it because I definitely learned a lot and it got me prepared. It definitely gives you a leg up compared to the active duty side because you have a better idea of what to expect when you go to basic. And in between these steps, probably right after apply and aptitude is when you actually would meet with your recruiter in person. At least that's what I did. And when you meet in person, it's kind of like an interview. He's asking, why do you want to join? What kind of jobs do you want to do? Things like that. They want to get to know you better. So that's a really important step too, because, they're looking to see, is this candidate serious? It's very, very difficult to get a hold of Air Force recruiters. There's not that many of them. So I had to essentially hound my recruiter to even respond to me. And I had a good Asvab. I didn't have anything that was going to prevent me from joining. So he was just always busy. He had so many people trying to message him. I think he told me at one point he had like 82 missed messages because he was out for a day or two. And, you just have to make sure you're calling them, stay on them. Just because they don't get back to you right away doesn't mean they don't like you or you're irritating them. You have to stay on them. So that's what I did. And I just showed that I was serious about it and I would do whatever it takes to join. So that's my best piece of advice if you're having some trouble getting a hold of the recruiter. And you're not alone, guys. You're not alone. Is there anything else? Some jobs do have a bonus, so your recruiter will be able to share that with you. Age and height requirements. So to enlist or join as an officer, you must be between 17 and have not reached your 42nd birthday. To join as a healthcare or ministry professional, you must be between 17 and 48 years of age. The Air Force Reserve maintains height and weight requirements to ensure our airmen are physically capable of carrying out their tasks. These vary slightly depending on your desired position. We utilize a BMI range 17.5 to 27.5 to determine your height to weight ratio for body composition. When a recruit is outside the BMI range, recruiters will use a body fat measurement with a maximum range of 26% for males, 36% for females. Yep, so when I did that, they definitely checked my height and my weight, and I'm pretty slim, I guess. I'm like 5'10", 5'11", 180, so I was definitely within the range. At least in the operational Air Force, in the Air Force Reserve, they do check our waist, so you get a waist measurement. So there was some thick airmen after COVID, and they're trying to curb some of the weight issues that occurred after COVID because they got rid of the waist measurement, which used to be part of your PT test, but not anymore. Health and vision. Let's see. The Air Force Reserve careers are often physically and mentally demanding, and airmen must be in good health to meet our strict standards. I did forget to say something. So I did get LASIK surgery prior to joining, so I had to get all sorts of waivers for stuff like that. So even something as routine as LASIK, I had to get a waiver from my doctor, my civilian doctor, and I had to bring that waiver with me to Meps. So it's no joke. And guys, if you're going to lie about your medical history too, from what I was told, they have a system now called Genesis where they can pull up all of your health information. So if you happen to be on, antidepressants, or maybe you were evaluated for self-harm or something like that, and you didn't share that with them, you might want to think twice, because from what I was told, that they can see all that now on the new Genesis system. Where was I? If you have a pre-existing health condition, your recruiter can help you consider the general guidelines for medical conditions and your eligibility for entrance. Additionally, your vision will be fully evaluated during your pre-entry. Well, that's what we talked about. You may have an eye refraction level of no worse than plus or minus 8. Note, some careers like pilots have stricter vision requirements to meet. Family and children. Because I did have a daughter and I was not married at the time, I had to get a notarized form stating that I was going to be paying the parents child support while I was in basic. You also have to provide a lease agreement to get your basic allowance for housing, which is your housing allowance that you get anytime you're on active duty orders. And if you have a dependent, it's more. So I also had to provide my child's birth certificate prior to leaving. And that's just talking about if you're a female. Okay, and citizenship. So if you wish to enlist as a non-citizen in the Air Force, you must be a lawful permanent resident with a valid permanent resident card, commonly known as a green card. LPRs are immigrants admitted for permanent residence to live and work in the United States. The requirements for being an officer are a little more strict, and you must be a native-born or naturalized U.S. citizen. U.S. residency requirements. Enlistment in the Air Force Reserve by non-U.S. citizens is limited to foreign nationals who are legally residing in the United States as lawful permanent resident. LPRs must possess it. Yep, you guys can read all that. Becoming a U.S. citizen. So we actually had a lot of people when I was in basic, also people in my current unit who are not citizens, but they were able to expedite their citizenship by joining the military. So it's a great way to serve your new country and help yourself out. I mean, you get all these benefits, make some money, help yourself get your citizenship. So there's a lot of perks if you find yourself in that situation. Education and test scores. You can enlist in the Air Force Reserve with a high school diploma or GED, but GED holders must meet the following requirements. Be at least 18 years old, must obtain a 65 qualifying score. Ooh, that's pretty high. You have a GED, I hope you're smart. Obtain 15 or more semester hours of qualifying college credit to gain the same eligibility as a high school graduate. Additionally, GED holders must wait for the GED applicant slots to be available, and this can sometimes take up to 1 year. And just join as an officer. Yeah, you guys can go through that. Also, when you join, if you have college credits, you will go in as a higher rank. So I'd have to look this up and see. If you have an associate's, you would go in, I think it's at least 60 credit hours. You would go in as an E3, an Airman First Class, and you get paid as an Airman First Class while you're in basic. So that's nice. I don't feel like looking it up right now. There's also a option if you were part of the Boy Scouts or JROTC. I think you also can get go in as a higher rank for those as well. And criminal record, we talked about that earlier. So law violations can heavily impact your eligibility for re-enlistment or for enlistment. Even an excessive number of traffic-related law violations within a 365-day period could negatively impact your eligibility. If you have concerns about your record, contact your recruiter to discuss your situation. The Air Force Reserve also strictly prohibits illegal drug use. In most cases, it's disqualifying, but pre-service marijuana use without exposure to legal proceedings in itself, well, it doesn't disqualify you. Your specific circumstance may be discussed. Yep. So just for FYI, I had smoked marijuana prior to joining the Air Force, and I admitted that, so I had to get a drug use waiver signed. And also, I've heard of some people who have pretty serious criminal issues. They actually have to get a waiver or some sort of form signed by a judicial official. So that's something to keep in mind too. So there's some things that are a hard stop in the military, but then there's some other things that just take a little bit of work on your part and your recruiter's part to get you in. So hopefully, if you do find yourself in that circumstance, that you have a recruiter who's willing to put in the time to help you get those waivers to try to get you in. And some other stuff. It's turning into a long video. I hope you guys find this helpful. What are the regulations on piercings and tattoos? I do have tattoos myself, so they will ask about your tattoos while you're going through the process. Make sure you don't have like swastikas on you and things that you shouldn't have. Also in certain parts of your body. So let's read this. It has strict requirements and restrictions regarding body modifications. If you plan to get a tattoo or other body modifications, carefully consider placement, size, and contents before you proceed. Tattoos, brands, or piercings anywhere in the body that are prejudicial or a nature that may bring discredit to the organization are prohibited. There are no size or area limitations for authorized tattoos on the chest, below an open collar, back, arms, and legs. Tattoos, brands, and body markings are prohibited on the head, face, tongue, lips, and scalp. One neck tattoo is allowed, but it cannot exceed 1 inch in requirement. In any direction, it must be placed behind either ear. Hand tattoos are limited to one single band ring tattoo on one finger, on one hand, and must not exceed 3/8 of an inch below the knuckle and above the finger joint portion closest to the palm. In addition, a single tattoo is allowed on each hand and must not exceed 1 inch in any direction. In some cases, certain exceptions may apply. Am I required to disclose my sexual orientation? Nope, I was never asked that question. Can I be married when I join? Yes, you can. You also get that extra BAH money. It's nice. And you also get your family separation pay. So when you hear allowances like basic allowance for housing, basic allowance for subsistence, these are allowances that are tax free. So the only thing that you're really getting taxed on in the military is your base pay. And your BAH depends on where you live. So if you live in Southern California, it's going to be a lot higher than you live in Idaho, for example. Can I be pregnant when I join? All female applicants must wait a minimum of 6 months postpartum to be eligible. Yeah, we had a lot of gals in our student flight and in basic training who had just had kids not that long ago, and they joined. So they did it to help themselves out and their families. So it definitely happens. Can my personal beliefs affect my eligibility to join? Airmen are free to exercise their religious beliefs as they choose and are not subject to any requirement. The only thing that may keep you from qualifying is a sincere objection to participating in war of any kind or to the bearing of arms. Some other articles on here. And that's it. We covered everything. So there's a lot more than what we covered today, but that was a condensed version of how long the process is. So just for perspective, when I initially reached out to the recruiter, this was I think initially I was going to go Army because Air Force was taking so long and I couldn't get a hold of the recruiter. So I'm so glad I ended up in the Air Force because I think I'm a much better fit for the Air Force than the Army. Nothing against the Army, but Air Force is the right branch for me. So I started in June or July of 2018, and I ended up leaving for basic training in January 2019. So it's about 6 or 7 months or so going through the process. I think I was done with I was actually done with the whole process in September. So I finished the whole process in September. I swore in September. So I officially, quote unquote, officially became part of the military at that point. And when you look at that, that's my entry date. So I was officially joined in the military in September of 2018. So like when it comes to things like rank, when you need to have so much time in service, it goes at that date when you initially enlisted. So I did that, initially joined in September. I did my first student flight in October, so that following month. And had a couple months of student flights. Before you can leave for basic training, though, you do have to pass a PT test in your student flight. if you guys do that. So I did have to pass that, which I did fine. And when you're in basic, you do have to pass PT test there as well, obviously. But I have a whole other video on basic if you guys want to check it out. But that's pretty much it, guys. There's also an option on here for Air National Guard. I don't know anything about Air National Guard. What I do know, though, is that pretty much my whole basic military training flight was with Air National Guard people. But from what I heard from them, it looks like the steps are essentially the same. And oftentimes, at least from what I've seen, the recruiter for the Air Reserve also does it for the Air National Guard. Or maybe I'm talking out my butt and I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm pretty sure that some recruiters actually do both. So I would ask your local recruiter about that and see if maybe the Guard is a better option for you. Because with the Guard, you get those federal benefits and then you also get the state benefits, which you do not get typically as a reservist. All right, guys, I am rambling, but I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider giving this video a like. Please also consider subscribing to the channel. I'll catch you on the next one very soon.